Hey everyone, I am Kate Volman and I am so excited to be joined by Darren Rowse. He is the founder of ProBlogger.net. And Darren, welcome to the show and thank you so much for chatting with me for a few minutes.
You're welcome. It's nice to see you again.
Yes, and Darren, I was just chatting with him, saying that I've been a fan for years and been following his blog, and now he has a podcast which I've been listening to. Lots of great content, and you've been in the space a long time. Darren started blogging in 2002, which is way back when nobody was blogging.
That's right. Although I felt like I was way late to
Did
it.
you?
I
Oh,
looked
that's
around at all the
so
other blogs and
funny.
thought, how am I ever going to compete with them all?
Well, look what you've done. You created a huge community and you started blogging in 2002 and then actually started making a living fully from blogging only a couple years later in 2004.
That's
And
right. Yeah, I blogged on a personal blog for those first 2 years, and then just gradually started to experiment and play around with some of the monetization strategies that were just emerging at that time.
which people need to check out your site because you do have a really crazy story about the jobs that you had while you were blogging and making ends meet and figuring things out. So it's a great story. So everyone needs to go. You can find it on ProBlogger.net, right? Your story
That's
right
right.
there.
If you just check out the Start Here page, you'll find out all the story, links to that story. Yeah.
Awesome. And he wrote a book, of course, called Pro Blogger Secrets to Blogging Your Way to a Six-Figure Income. And he wrote that back in 2008. And you've had 3 editions, so lots of upgrades and new tips and strategies to give everybody that picks up a copy of that book, which is
For
great.
sure. Yeah.
So, Darren, I'm so excited to talk to you because blogging is one of those things that most small business owners, they always say, I know I need to blog, but I'm not. So, kind of starting high level, in today's business world, there's so many people that have a blog that are writing. They want to get their attention and eyes on their business. How do you stand out now with so many people producing all this content?
Yeah, I think a lot of it does come down to the kind of content that you're creating and how you differentiate yourself to other people. So, um, as a base level, you need to be creating useful content that's in some way changing the lives of your reader. So that sounds like a bit grandiose, but you need to do something that's useful, that's bringing about a change in their life. And I think that's ultimately that's what the most successful blogs do. They take people on a journey from one point to another, even if it's just informing them the latest news or keeping them up to date with what's going on in the industry or teaching them something, which is what I do with my blogs. So if you're changing people's lives in some way, they're going to keep coming back and they'll tell other people about you. But there's a lot of blogs doing that now, and so you've got
Hmm.
to start to think about how can I differentiate myself, and really a lot of that comes down to your branding, your design, but also your voice. And I think a lot of bloggers can really work on trying to find a gap in what's going on in their industry in terms of the style of content, the voice of content, the mediums that are being used. I think there's a real opportunity at the moment with live streaming video that can be a medium that you could really use and then embed that content back on your blog. That's something that you could do that would be a little bit different to what I think a lot of people are doing today. So you always got to look out for those new technologies, new styles of creating content, and that can help to differentiate you.
I love that. And in fact, there are there's so many, like you said, there's so many platforms people can do Periscope and Blab and all these other ways to create content. How do you first figure out what you're going to say and then figure out how you're going to say it and then produce the content and then get it up? I mean, I feel like it can be really overwhelming for a business owner
Sure.
to figure out what that looks like.
Okay, so the first thing I would be doing is work out what the big change that you're trying to bring is. So for my blog, I'm trying to teach people how to get out of automatic mode in their cameras to give them full creative control of their cameras. That's on my photography blog, which is
Hmm.
my other blog. So that's the big change I'm trying to bring. Yours might be completely different depending on the industry that you're in. Work out the big change and then break it down. So for me, when I started that blog, I said to myself, that's the big change I'm trying to bring. What do people need to know to get from point A, being in fully automatic mode, to point B, having creative control of their cameras? And then I came up with 200 things that they needed to know, and they became my first 200 pieces of content for the blog. So really break it down, the journey that you're trying to take your readers on. So that'll be really different depending on the type of blog that you're creating, but that's a good starting point. And I do exactly the same thing with my Facebook Live. So I'm big on Facebook Live at the moment and podcasting. So I've done exactly the same process, and I'm drawing on those steps in the process to take people to that ultimate goal that I'm trying to help them to realize.
I love that. I think that we sometimes overcomplicate things. So when you actually break it down, that makes it a lot easier to figure out kind of that next step.
Yeah.
So in your opinion, what is the biggest mistake that businesses are making today when it comes to blogging?
Okay, well, there's so many, but let me just whip off a couple. I think inconsistent amounts of posting. So I see a lot of businesses start out strong and they put up a post every day, and then they don't post for a month, and then they have another little burst. I think a regular, steady stream of content is important, both for you as the writer, because once you're in that flow, Tuesdays are the day you post this, and Thursdays are the days you post that. I think getting into that regularity for you, that really does help you to create content, but it also is even more important for your readers. Readers begin to know your rhythm, even if you don't communicate it to them. I get emails all the time from people saying, "You missed your 6 a.m. Facebook post." I'm like, I never told you I was doing it at 6 a.m., but
That's
they
awesome.
realize, and becomes a part of their week. So regularity is really important. And I think the other thing I see a lot of businesses, particularly using their blogs for solely, is marketing. And that's fine. You can definitely use a blog for marketing, talking about your products and services. You should, but you also need to think about, is that really useful to your readers? What else can you create that's going to change their life in some way? So, telling them your story, giving them tips on how to use your products, answering frequently asked questions that you get from your customers, talking about your suppliers, talking about some of your customers and using some case studies of what other people are doing with your products. These types of things not only talk about your products, but they actually show people how to use them, and answer some of the questions that they have as they're considering whether your product's right for them. And they also humanize your brand as well. So if you're talking about how you're getting up and using video and that type of content, it shows that you're a human being as well, not just a brand. So not just marketing, but actually doing other things around your marketing can really make your marketing much more effective on a blog.
So talking about marketing, when I know I get this a lot where people or business owners say, I've been blogging and I keep writing all this stuff and nothing's happening and no one's coming to my blog. And I think that some people actually feel like they press the publish button and just all these eyeballs are on their blog, and that is obviously not the case. So what are some other strategies that they can use to get more people to actually see the blogs that they're writing?
Yeah, sure. So there's a number of things that you should be thinking about. In fact, I just published a podcast last night on 4 ways to get more eyeballs on your blog. And number one was guest content. So thinking about how could you be participating in some of the places that your potential readers are already gathering. So being interviewed on a video like this puts me in front of people that I wouldn't have had opportunity to do that in front of before. And there's a whole heap of different ways that you can create content in other people's websites to help get you an eyeball, to get the attention of people for the first time. Now, some of them you need permission to do, like you had to ask me to be on this video, but there's forums on almost every topic that you could be creating content for. You could be adding tips into forums. There's Facebook groups that you can join and be adding tips in and being useful in those places. You could be leaving comments on other blogs. So one of the exercises I really encourage people to do is to, one, define who you want to reach, like create a little avatar of your reader or your customer, and then ask yourself the question, what's the top 5 blogs that they read? What's the top 5 forums that they participate in? Who are the top 5 influencers that they follow on Twitter? What are the top 5 Facebook groups that they're a part of, or LinkedIn groups that they're a part of? List all these places that your reader is already hanging out and look for opportunities to add value in those places and even create content in those places. for me, that's probably the number one strategy that I would use to get more eyeballs, because your reader is already online somewhere. You just need to work out where they are and how you can add value in those places. It's not about spamming. It's about being valuable and useful. And people notice that a lot.
Yeah. And I know that you did a podcast okay, your podcast, it just is awesome. So little promo for Darren's
Thank
podcast
you.
that you need to if you're interested in blogging at all, your podcasts are really great because you do share a lot of very simple tips that people can start actually doing today, and they build on each other. So I recognize that you do that. Like now you're kind of doing a series. And so I found myself, the last one I listened to, I'm like, oh, I can't wait for the next one, which of course is what everyone wants with content. But I know that you do have a podcast about creating your avatar. And I think that's really important for business owners. And I think we all know we should do it, but not everyone has that really specific person, avatar, buyer persona, whatever you call it, really clearly defined, because I think a lot of people don't want to go so niche. They don't want to go very niche because they feel like they're losing out. So talk a little bit about how someone can truly identify who that person is so that they know where to find them online.
Yeah, sure. So when you're just starting out, it's all guesswork. When I first did my first avatar, I was like, who do I want to read my blog? And I came up with 4 different avatars that could potentially end up reading my photography blog. Turned out 3 of them showed up, which was kind of nice. But really what I say is, the more you understand about who your reader is, the better position you're in to create content that's going to be useful to them, that the better position you'll be in to find those readers, because you'll start to see where they're hanging out. And also you'll start to understand how to engage them. And that's the third really important thing that I think most blogs don't do, is they don't have a strategy for engaging those readers and actually getting them to comment. It's that fully engaged reader who is the person who's most likely to buy your products, but also share what you're doing. And that's really important in finding new readers. So really work hard on understanding that reader. It's all guesswork in the start, but then as soon as you start to have readers, you have all kinds of opportunities to refine your avatar and to find out who is actually reading it. And so we use surveys. We have an autoresponder sequence. So when you come to our blog, you can sign up for our newsletter, and then we invite you to fill in a survey about a month or so after you join. And that gives us a little bit of a demographical data, but it also really helps us to understand the problems of our readers and the needs. So we ask them all kinds of questions to kind of tease out what their challenges are, and that then becomes our content strategy, and it gives a whole heap of questions to ask and to engage our readers as well. So that type of thing. And also live streaming, I hate to keep coming back to it, but for me it's the best way to start to understand your readers. There's a great tool called Blab. I don't know if you've come across Blab, but it pretty much is what we're doing right now. It puts 4 people into a conversation on a screen, and you can have a conversation with your readers, see them, hear them, and get to know them. And that really brings alive my writing. When I've just had a conversation with someone, I then go away and write a blog post to that person. Don't name them, but I find that really makes my content come across much more personally, much more conversationally. And it actually means I create content based upon a real need or a real conversation that I've had, which seems to go over really well with readers as well. So do whatever you can to get in front of and into a conversation with your readers.
Yes. Okay. There are so many things that I love about what you just said. The first is Blab, because I actually do a couple different shows on Blab weekly. I made myself do them weekly just to, like you said, to be really consistent. And it's true about having that one-on-one conversation. And I think that what people don't recognize is that everything, just like everything that you know about blogging or whatever the business is, that they're the expert in that industry, they tend to think, oh, no one needs to know that. Everybody knows that. It's common knowledge, but it's not. And so when you're in front of people and having that conversation, you realize, oh, people don't know where to start with a blog or don't know how to guest blog. And so, but for you or a marketer, they're like, oh yeah, we talk about that every day. Yeah. So people can't forget that there's a lot of goodness that you know and hear that you just take for granted.
Yeah, one of my most successful blog posts ever is a post called How to Hold a Camera. It's the
Wow.
most basic thing. It's something that I was embarrassed to publish because I just thought, who doesn't know how to hold a camera? But it
Right.
turns out, I published that, must have been 7 or 8 years ago now. Close to 800,000 people have hit that post, and they've all come from Google. It's never had a big spike, of another site sending that traffic. It's all come from Google, which means people are typing in, how do you hold a camera? The things
Wow.
that you have forgotten that you know are actually what people are searching the web for. Those questions that they're too embarrassed to ask their friends, you should be writing content on those types of things, because that will start the relationship if you can answer those questions in a way that shows them it's not a stupid question. It's a really good question because it's an
Yeah.
important, step in doing what I'm trying to teach them. Yeah.
Yeah, it's like when you start typing something in Google and it already knows it for you, or you're like, oh,
Yeah,
okay, there must be other people searching for this same thing.
exactly.
You also talked about signing up for your newsletter. So let's talk a little bit about the importance of that in helping to build that relationship with people once they find you on your blog.
Yeah, it's the best thing that I ever did was to start a newsletter off the back of my blogs. I think I did it first in about 2005, 2006, and I did it for my dad because he didn't know how to subscribe using what
Oh my
everyone thought
gosh.
was going to kill email, which is RSS feeds, which hardly
Mm-hmm.
anyone uses today at all. So I set up a newsletter for my dad, so that he could get the updates of content from my site. And then I thought, well, if he's subscribed, I might as well put it out there for other people, put it up. And I think about 80 or 90% of our readers now subscribe via email. It drives traffic to our site. It builds relationships with our readers because I'm able to engage them in conversation and drive them to our social media. But number one, it sells our products. And email for us sells way more products than anything else that we do. Our blog posts don't convert anywhere near as well. So use your blog to drive people to your email and do your selling via email. That's what I typically do. Even social media, I don't find sells anywhere near as well.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes so much sense. People are not in that mode. It's so funny how I still come across so many people that say, "Oh, I know email doesn't work anymore." I'm like, "Really? Who are you talking to?"
Yeah. Look, I think there's certainly it perhaps isn't as effective as it used to be, and I do think that messaging seems to be taking over, and I think there'll be a lot more selling via direct message. We're seeing Facebook now develop their messenger type apps, but and that's certainly where young people seem to be interacting a whole heap more. I know a lot of people from sort of millennials who don't even have email addresses, or they only have them to sign up for things.
Right.
But I think the mainstream is lagging behind that by at least 5 or so years, and so email, at least for the next 5 or so years, is going to be probably the number one thing that you can do.
So, do you have any favorite apps or tools that you use to just overall, I guess, be more effective with your blog? Are there things that you use like every day?
Sure, I live in Google Analytics. I just think that just gives you so much information. I can't believe it's free. We use WordPress for all of our blogs. We use Slack for team communications.
Mm-hmm.
We use another app called Trello, again for a bit of team communication stuff, but also I find it really good to create to-do lists and to brainstorm and come up with content ideas. I'm using Evernote a lot to keep ideas. I love the fact that it's on my phone, and I can just open up an Evernote app. I can record my voice if I've got an idea for a podcast or something like that as well. So that'd be probably the main apps that I'm hanging out in. Yeah.
And do you have any advice on creating a really amazing headline title of a blog? I feel
Oh
like
gosh,
this
yeah.
is so important.
Yeah, it is. And it's not only blog posts, it's podcasts, it's your Facebook lives,
Yes.
it's every single thing you do. People make a decision on whether they're going to read or consume that content
Yep,
based on
you're
the
right.
headline. Look, there's a number of strategies you can take. I tend to go and state the bleeding obvious in mine. I was like, if I'm writing about tips on how to do something, I just call my article that. I find that's good for search engine optimization. It does work on social media. It doesn't get so many of the curiosity clicks. I know, like the BuzzFeed article that doesn't actually tell you what it's about, but teases you to go and look at it.
Yeah.
That can work, but I find that often leads to a really short visit. because people come and they go, oh, that's not really what I need. Whereas if I tell them what it's about, anyone who's got that need is going to click that link and they're going to stay there for a while and can really consume the content. So that's kind of the approach I take. There are certain keywords, though, you begin to notice over time work for your audience. So I know when we write anything with mistakes in the title, so 10 mistakes that someone, a travel photographer makes, those seem to get people across for some reason to our site. We know there's certain topics, I guess, that work for us. When we mention the word DIY or low cost ways to, that appeals to the readers that we have. So you need to just watch that type of thing. One of the tools that we use quite a bit is Buzzsumo. Which allows us to analyze what's being shared in terms of content on our site. And again, you'll see there some patterns in your headlines, so patterns that have worked in the past for you that you can then repeat. And you can also do the same exercise, plug in someone else's domain, one of your competitors or other blogs in your niche, and see what headline formats are working for them as well.
Yeah, that is a great tool. And that one's free too, right? Or you can upgrade to
There's a free version. It does give you sort of limited results. We've upgraded. No affiliation with them at all, but they've worked well. And they actually wrote a really great blog post recently about titles. So if you look on their blog, the Buzzsumo blog, there's something there about the most shareable titles, and they look at certain keywords that work well in titles as well.
So with social media and everything and blogs, obviously blogs, most people think of it as written content. You've talked obviously a lot about live streaming videos and stuff. What are some of the things that business owners really need to be focused on if they're going to write a blog post, as far as like the visuals or the things that complement that post?
Yeah, visuals are so important. I generally break my creation of content down into 3 steps, and I separate them out. So I do them separately. Brainstorming ideas. I find that if I try and come up with the idea and then create content all in one go, I just sit there trying to come up with an idea. So I try to brainstorm a whole heap of ideas ahead of time so that I can then draw on those ideas. Then there's the creation time, and so either recording the podcast or writing. And then there's the polishing, editing stage. And I find that I need to separate that out as well, because it takes a different kind of part of my brain, a bit more critical thinking, and also a bit of creativity to make it look good. So in that polishing stage, I'm looking at visuals, I'm looking at formatting of the posts, so thinking about the subheadings, and people scan your content before they read it. So you want to use some big, bold headings that intrigue them, that make them want to read what's in between them. Visuals down the post as well can help draw the eye down the post and lead them to your important points as well. I'm also thinking about lists. I'm trying to, format it in a way that can be scanned a little bit better. I'm trying to add in a little bit of depth, so maybe a quote from Twitter and embedding, what someone said on Twitter. You can embed content from Twitter, or Facebook, or YouTube. Any embeddable content keeps people on your site a little bit longer as well, and that helps in a whole heap of ways.
Darren, thank you so much for chatting with me. You have given us lots of great tips on blogging, and where should people go and find you to connect with you?
We've just moved everything over onto ProBlogger.com. We were on .net and still there on .net as well, but if you go to ProBlogger.com, you'll find links to the podcast, the ebooks, the event we run here in Australia, the blog, everything that we do. So that's probably the best place to go, and then all our social media links are there as well.
Awesome. And which one are you most active on if someone wants to find you?
Depends on the day, but probably Twitter and Facebook would be the main places that I am these days, particularly Facebook with the live kind of stuff. I kind of given up on Periscope a little bit to get onto Facebook, but Twitter is where I do a lot of my bouncing around and sharing of what I'm reading and that type of stuff.
Awesome. Well, everyone has to subscribe to your podcast because it's awesome content, and when we want to see you live, now we know where to go, right on Facebook. Ask questions and start engaging with you. So, Darren, thank you again so much, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks, Kate.